cloud. Okay. So week 4 in public relations is actually, it's an interesting week. So let's share my screen. So it looks like you've only got 2 things due, but you got the case study as well. And I'll talk about that in a moment. As you're doing your mastery reflection, just think about, realize and add into your IMP the fact that what public relations represents is another channel, another marketing channel. It's the earned media channel, and how important that is to your overall organizational and marketing objectives. Okay, and you want to build that in, and then refer back to your week 2 discussion with regard to you know, how do you measure that, and what are leading indicators, what are lagging indicators, or and by the way, you can also tie that back to your what the work that we did in new media marketing with goals and so forth. So understand high level goals, secondary goals, then what are the strategies that we need to implement in order to achieve those goals. If we put a number to those strategies, do they then become a goal? And then we can look at the tactics and so forth. We get down to the metrics level. And remember, in public relations, we look at the Barcelona principles, which really speak to the fact that we don't want to just focus on activity, like how many press releases I do, but rather, what are the outcomes that I'm looking for? And also understand that in the earlier days prior to 2010, has it really been 10 years, that public relations was, the way that we measured public relations was by what's known as add value equivalency. So if I could get you as a media journalist to write a story about my business, and that story was a quarter of a newspaper ad, I could go to my boss and say, I just saved the company $10,000 on what you would have spent for a quarter-page newspaper ad. But that doesn't speak to the quality of what was told and the results that it achieves and so forth. Today, we're a lot smarter. So back in 2010, that's when the initial Barcelona conference took place, where public relations people from all over the world came together and said, what's the best way to tell our story? And so it's a combination of activities and outcomes, not one or the other. All right, so that's your mastery reflection. Your discussion is, I kind of snuck in an assignment. Because what I'm having you do is redo your press release. Okay, based on the feedback I just gave you. Okay. So you got a leg up. You got it right from the horse's mouth. So you want to rewrite that with the feedback that I gave you today. Then you want to take a look, and remember we said we want to repurpose the content. So that's why you were looking at Facebook and your social media channels and so forth in your distribution strategy. I'm not going to take a press release and dump it into a Facebook post. Versus I'm going to look at that information that's on the press release, and I'm going to write it in a way that's the way that you see most Facebook posts written. Personal, first-hand account, and I'll probably end up using the picture that was in it. So what So the trick to this assignment is you first have to go back and wear your public relations hat and rewrite the press release as a public relations professional. Take that hat off, and now you're a new media journalist. Okay? And now as a new media journalist, you own certain channels. You own your Facebook channel, your Twitter channel, Instagram. You own your website. You can put a blog post up. So, let's talk about a blog because it's a long form content. You take a look at what you wrote and now write it as a blog. So where you may have one page, you may have one paragraph that answers all the critical questions. As you're re-answering those questions now as a journalist, you may actually end up with 2 or 3 paragraphs as it relates to, and then throw in the quotes here, a quote here or there. You've got yourself a really nice blog post. But you went from having one key paragraph that told the story in your press release to now you've taken that paragraph and turned it into 2 or 3. Right. Okay. Same with Twitter. You never take a press release and smack it on a tweet. Right. You only have 240 characters.
Right.
So you gotta boil down your press release into a couple of very succinct messages that come from the press release that you might put on Twitter. And then, in Instagram, again, you've got at least one picture. And how many different captions could you put on that picture to use in your Instagram feed over a period of time? Oh. So that when we talk about repurposing content, that's what we're talking about. Okay? Now, you might actually have a video. You could have a video video snippet that you send out with the press release too. So you could repurpose there you got a lot of options because you could actually do screenshots from different frames on your video, and you have a whole lot of pictures available to use for different purposes. So, and by the way, your Facebook campaign with your press release might be multiple posts too. It doesn't have to be just one post. And here's where you need to think really hard. You understand what the basic marketing funnel is, right? So I have awareness, I have interest, then I have consideration, and then I have decision. How do I want this content? Who do I want it to interact with? Do I want it to interact with people at the top of the funnel? Do I want people in the middle? And you could have 2 different Facebook posts. One that's got content from your press release that's looking at the top of the funnel with awareness, and then you may have some content further down that's focused more on people that might be in the consideration or decision phase of the funnel. So you really have to kind of think about where you are with that, and there's not a right or wrong answer necessarily because you're the marketer, right? The only proof is after you run the campaign and then you look at the analytics and say, did I move the needle or not? If you didn't move the needle, then you had the wrong answer, at least for that time frame. Okay. Let's go to the case study. My Apple Watch decided I was actually talking to Siri and has created a very, very long dictation of everything I just said. Who is on your team?
Cara and Olakemi.
Okay. So if you go back and look at the week one archive, you'll find where I go over the case study in pretty good detail. But just to come back and discuss this a little bit, what you're basically doing, and by the way, this is kind of the secret to business success. If you can frame things in this way, here's the basic model. What's the current state? What's the ideal state? What do we have to do to go from the current state to the ideal state? What are the tactics that we need to use? Guess what?
Mm.
That's strategy, and that's what everything at a master's level is focused at. I'm at point A. I want to go to point B. What do I have to do to go from point A to point B? Now, in this particular case study, your current state is there was some sort of crisis, some sort of problem, and you need to identify that. Okay? Then, because it's a case study, you might have where the company attempted some sort of solution. So you might have what they then did. But chances are it wasn't ideal, or you wouldn't have picked them as a case study company. So now you can talk about here's what the problem was, here's what they did, and here's what they need to do to make it right, to make it ideal. Okay? Now, in terms of tactics that you're using, the tactics are everything that we've discussed in this class in both the assignments and the discussions. So you want to kind of go through and say, okay, what are the tools of public relations? Well, you got to have a monitoring system. You want to be able to truly understand the strategic context that the company exists in. You want to be able to provide both internal and external messaging. You want to be able to tell a measurement story. You're probably going to have some form of press release that needs to be, and it might be more than one. And then you're going to have a distribution strategy for that press release. And what is the additional, how are you going to repurpose that content to fill your own channel needs? And so you're taking all these tools and that's going to be part of your ideal solution. So even if what the company did was kind of okay, I can always make the argument they left stuff on the table because they didn't do X, Y, and Z. If they had done X, Y, and Z, this would have been a much better solution. So in this instance, you're probably talking about 3 points. What started the problem, what they did to fix it. So what they did to fix it becomes your new current state. And where do you want to go ultimately as the ideal state? Okay. The other thing is, I remember the first time I taught this course, I had a group that they provided the background on the company and the problem. Well, on the company, they did a complete history of the company from its inception in the early 1900s all the way to 2012 or 2013, whatever the year was. And 17 minutes into the presentation, I still had no idea what the problem was or what the crisis was. Your presentation should be around 6 or 7 minutes. Your presentation should probably encompass anywhere from 12 to 15 slides. Now, the 12 to 15 slides include a title. It includes an introduction where you outline what you're going to cover for the day. And then you get into you want to provide the background. But here's the thing. The background that you want to provide is going to be that strategic context that we discussed in week 1 for your other company. You now want to apply what you did there to this new company. Does that make sense? So, you have one slide for the title, one slide to show how you're going to cover the topic, then a slide that provides the background, which is really the strategic context. You might have a slide that shows what the threats or what you're looking at from a standpoint of the consumer, a standpoint of the of competitors, and the overall business environment. So that or your stakeholders. So you could break out your strategic context into 1 or 2 slides. It's up to you. Then once you do that, explain what the problem is. Explain what they did. And that should be 1 slide. And then if they tried to fix it, what did they do to try and fix it? Or was the fix what really was the problem? Which is sometimes the issue.
Mm.
And then what is it that you are recommending and why? And that's your case study presentation. Okay? So that's really it for week 4. Pretty short and to the point.
Yes.
But you got the bonus of your press release.
Yes.
Okay? So if anybody asks you what's the benefit of coming to Zoom meetings, you can say sometimes you get extra special treatment.
So is it okay if I, because I did post on the discussion yesterday, so I can go ahead and change it now that I got the feedback?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, Virginia, that's all I got for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.